Well, let's go back to William and Dolores.
Yes.
Because they fall in love. And he's following Dolores on her journey, and she's like glitching out. She's like remembering things that aren't there, and she sees things. And it's said in the series that a memory for a host is indistinguishable between them experiencing it in real life.
Yeah.
And whereas that is important.
Yeah, human memory is
like
sketchy
dreamlike
at best.
And stuff like that. But for a host, it's very specific.
Yeah,
and almost as if it's
really
as
exact as if it was happening a second time.
Right. So William, he loves her and all that stuff. But Logan comes back and they get separated.
Yeah, and and in truth, Logan is absolutely right. Every time he talks to William about Dolores. Because
he's like, dude, she's a robot.
She's a fucking robot, man. Why are you freaking out over this damn robot?
More than that. It's more than that, dude. She's not just a robot. She's my robot girlfriend. And he's like,
I love this robot.
And he's like, dude, shut the fuck up. And he's like, and Logan's like really like pushing his buttons.
Yeah.
And it gets to a point where William and Logan, like William like ties the dude up and shit, and he's like, fuck you. And then William just kind of goes fucking batshit insane and just starts killing hosts and shit.
Yeah.
And Dolores is nowhere to be found.
It eventually does. I mean, and it takes Logan doing some pretty heinous shit to Dolores for William to realize it. Like, he... Like, it isn't specifically, like, said or not whether he, like, takes her away and rapes her or just, like, takes her and brutalizes her or something. Right. But either way, he fucking shanks her in the belly real hardcore and, like, rips her stomach open and shows him...
He's like, look, she's a robot.
Yeah, all of the mechanical parts that are moving inside her. Yeah, she's a robot, dude.
And you're in love with it, you fucking weirdo.
Yep.
So anyway, fast forward a little bit. Bernard is still around.
He is.
Okay.
And
he had his memory wiped.
He has an interaction with Maeve that, yes, because Ford wiped his memory, and so he was like, okay, no, whatever. And then the security guy has that thing where he says, I know you and Teresa were close, and
he's like,
what?
What?
No, we were just work colleagues, because he didn't remember.
He didn't remember killing her. But anyway, it comes out...
He has an interaction with Maeve that she's like, you're a host. Because she can control them at that point. Right. She has those administrative privileges. So she tells him, no, you're not going to change my programming back. And he's like stuck. He can't do anything. And he's like, why can't I do anything? She's like, because you're like me.
Because you're a host. And then he remembers.
And then he remembers everything. Because again, for the hosts, the reveries are like reliving all of that stuff again.
So then what happens?
We're
getting close to the finale.
We are, because the next big reveal came with this next scene. Bernard goes down to cold storage, and he has Ford come down
and
as
he's got him held at gunpoint by Clementine, who's been like formatted and reprogrammed pretty much
so
to only respond to Bernard.
Yeah, and she theoretically has the ability to murder any living being, because that was what Teresa and Charlotte had done to her programming in order to get Bernard fired in the first place. Right. So Bernard is basically holding Ford hostage while he's telling Ford, you need to go into my programming, take me all the way back. I need to know what is going on with myself. And Ford's like, okay, let's do this, son.
And sure you want to do this? And he's like, yep. And he's like, all right, bitch.
So they do it. And frickin' Bernard goes all the way back to that very... And I thought it was kind of interesting how they did that core memory. That thing
the little boy?
Because for Bernard, it was the death of his cancer-ridden son.
Right.
And that was a cornerstone memory, I think was what they called it in the show.
Yeah.
It was something that basically formed the entire crux of that host's personality.
Right.
And for Bernard, as host Bernard, it was the death of his son. Mm. And so he had to go back to that memory and then go back even farther.
Right. But eventually, after seeing all the memories, Ford's like, well, I can't let you hang out, and makes Bernard shoot himself in the head.
Because Bernard is Arnold.
Did we know that Bernard was Arnold whenever Bernard shot himself in the head? Because I didn't think that was revealed until the last episode.
No, that was in that episode because that was his ultimate realization. After he went all the way back, he realized that because Ford said something to the effect of, "I gave you that backstory because it was Arnold's backstory. Arnold's son died. His wife left him."
Who was Zoe from Firefly?
Yeah, that was kind of a nice little thing. But yeah, he gave Bernard Arnold's backstory because that again was the crux of Arnold's personality, and it's why and how he was such a good programmer. He knew so much about the human mind because he had explored it so far into himself.
Right.
That he could replicate it in the hosts.
All right, we got to keep going. We're spending a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Bernard is a host copy of Arnold.
Yeah, he's a host copy of Arnold. So William's running around and he's looking for Dolores. Meanwhile, the man in black finds Dolores and they're having a conversation. And she's like, "No, the one that I love, William, he'll find me." And he's like, "I know William."
And let me tell you a story about
William.
William.
What happens to William. And it turns out that William never finds Dolores.
Well, he does.
Well, I mean, he doesn't find her in the way that he was hoping to.
Exactly.
He goes back to the town and he sees Dolores and he's like, "Hey," but she drops the little can and it rolls to the foot of a different guest, and that guest, and she engages him with that narrative. And then William's like, "Oh,
she's a motherfucking robot.
Bitch. She is a fucking
this robot bitch."
And it turns out that William is the man in black all along, and that William and Logan's story was happening 30 plus years in the past.
And the company that Logan's family owns
is Delos.
And
they end up increasing their holdings in the company, and Logan gets... I don't know if he dies,
he is strapped
or
naked
he's
to a
strapped
horse
naked to a horse,
and sent to
William sends him off. William somehow gets control of the company, and
and he is a majority shareholder in Delos,
and had a family and a wife and everything, and has been coming to the park over and over and over again to try and just complete every story.
Yeah,
right.
And that's why he's been on this in the search for this maze for the entirety of the show.
Right.
Because it was a thing that he and Dolores had done 30 years before. They had gone on the search for this maze.
But they didn't find it.
And he lost Dolores along the way, and then he finds her again in the town and realizes, shit, she's just a robot. It doesn't matter at all.
She's a robot. So anyway, turns out that Dolores knew Arnold back in the day. And killed Arnold.
Yes.
Arnold
had programmed her to do so.
Arnold had programmed her to kill him.
Because he did not want the park to open, because he thought that he had managed to create actual conscious sentience in these hosts.
In their mind brains.
Because he had implanted them with the idea of the maze itself. And is telling Dolores a little bit about the way that he had seen consciousness, which is like the memory pyramid. And that he realized he was wrong about it, and so it's actually a maze. It's ever searching into yourself to figure out what it is that makes you you.
Right. And so basically to wrap it up, because we've got to move on. We're already like close to an hour into the podcast.
That is impressive.
Right. And we still aren't even halfway through of everything we're supposed to talk about. In fact, I think we should take a break after we get done talking about the Westworld series.
All right.
But anyway.
Make this a two-part. Are we going to make a two-parter?
No. It's going to be one. We're just going to pause it and go out and smoke. But anyway. So long story short, Ford decides he agrees to step down as chairman of the board or whatever.
It's important to note, though, that the reason that the park opened at all, even though Bernard / Arnold originally, because it was still Arnold at the time, and Arnold reprogrammed Dolores to kill him and everybody in this town, that Ford was like, no, it's still just their programming. He programmed them to do this. They didn't do it on their own.
Right.
So we're still going to open the park. The park still opens. And then at the end of all of this, after 30 years of living with these hosts and seeing what they can do and seeing these bits of consciousness still coming through, he decides pretty much the same thing that Arnold decided.
Right, they come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, that these are potentially sentient beings
But
that they've
it's
created.
the suffering.
But it's
that
the
makes
suffering that makes us human.
Right.
And makes them sentient.
Yeah.
It's the reveries, it's the remembering, it's the suffering through those memories.
Right. And so, he goes to give his big speech after they unveil the new narrative, and Dolores shoots him in the head.
Yep, he's dead.
Ford is dead. And then all the other hosts, or a lot of other hosts, go and start killing people in that are presumably the board of Delos.
And fucking William, the man in black, gets shot in the arm. He's like,
he
fuck
smiles,
yeah!
And he's like, finally.
Finally. This story is actually going to matter.
Right.
Which was what he wanted all along. So, I mean, good for him.
Right.
Yeah,
so
good for him.
That's a very loose adaptation of what happened within the season. I do want to say, like, a lot of things that I like about this show are... like the music is great. Like you find out, or I mean, you notice in some shows now, some songs I didn't recognize because I don't know a lot of like Radiohead and shit.
Right.
But they have like the player piano, and it'll play modern songs like Black Hole Sun. And all
Black
that
Hole
kind of
Sun
stuff.
was like in the first episode. That was the first one that we noticed,
and it definitely feels like a sci-fi western. It's got that whole sci-fi aspect to it, but it's very much a western as well.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy that, and it kind of reminds me of like Firefly and stuff like that, which is very much a western.
Oh yeah.
I don't care what you say.
Oh no, it absolutely is.
So as far as things I didn't like about the show, it's hard to even think of anything. I enjoyed it every single week, and it became like a ritual. I didn't get to watch it every Sunday. It was actually Tuesdays when my girlfriend and I watched it, but it's just, it was a great show. It's been renewed for a second season, and I've heard people online, at least, or read people online that had said, if this was the series finale, I would have been fine with it.
Yeah.
But where do we go from here? That's the question.
Samurai World.
Samurai World.
Samurai
multiple
World.
worlds confirmed,
Yes.
by the way, on this.
And Maeve's daughter in one of those other worlds.
Yeah, in Park 1.
Park 1.
Is
Whichever
Westworld
one is Park
Who
1.
knows?
Yeah.
So Maeve might be going into some other parks. We might meet other hosts. There's speculation that the Ford that gets shot could be a host. There's speculation that Ford's consciousness could be put into a different host. I mean, we don't know. And the thing about the hosts being so lifelike makes it hard to tell who is real and who isn't. And I think that's probably going to be another...
Especially now that the hosts can actually harm the guests.
Right.
It is going to be that much more difficult now.
Well, you and I were talking about sequels to the original movie, and in Future World, the storyline for that was that they were cloning rich and powerful people. So what if this whole board gets cloned into hosts and goes about their business, and the bodies are buried in Westworld, and Ford continues, or Robot Ford, or whatever. I mean, we don't know, of course. We're not going to get another season for over a year.
Yeah, 2018.
Which sucks.
Yeah, it does. But Jonathan Nolan has already planned out the entire arc of this series as a whole. If it continues to get renewed, he's got it planned out to the very end.
Well, I can't wait to watch it to the very end.
I love the philosophy of this show. I will just say that. That is my favorite thing about this entire series, has just been the ongoing discussion of philosophy of consciousness and
the illusion of free will.
Exactly.
Because religion would tell you, or Christianity would tell you, that God is omnipotent and knows the past, the future, and the present, and he has a plan for you and everything. But at the same time, God gave us free will. But if he's omnipotent and he knows what's going to happen, how do we have free will?
Exactly.
And really, that's touched on a lot, especially with Maeve, is that, that's the whole illusion of free will. These hosts, even with Maeve. And when she left the train at the end, did she do that on her own, or was that programmed into her? And Ford is kind of the god of this world.
I was telling you about...
And then Dolores kills God.
Yep. I was telling you about that conversation that I had with a friend of mine who also has been following the show from the very beginning, but she is very, very religious.
Okay.
We had just a fascinating conversation about the ethics of Westworld, the comparison of Ford and Arnold to potentially God and Lucifer, and it was just a really fascinating conversation.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah. And so, like, my question then to her was more of like, okay, then if, say, William and Dolores are the Adam and Eve of this Westworld Eden, then Dolores is the reason for everything terrible that happens in this world. Then.
Original sin.
Yeah.
Huh.
And kind of a little bit she is. She murders Arnold at the beginning. She murders Ford at the end. I don't know. There's just so much fun and interesting commentary that you can take a look at with a show that's this deep and interesting.
Right.
I've really been enjoying it. That's all I'm going to say. There's virtually nothing in this show that I have disliked.